Before this story begins, I want you to pause for just a moment. If you believe that some stories aren't just entertainment, but mirrors. If you've ever stayed awake replaying a goodbye that never made sense, if silence has ever echoed louder than shouting, then subscribe to this channel. Because what you're about to hear isn't simply about love. It's about absence. It's about protection that hurts. It's about truths that arrive late in the quiet ways. They change us forever. Now, let me tell you about Ethan. Ethan had been fixing things all evening, not because they urgently needed fixing, not because the house was falling apart, but because when his hands were busy, his thoughts were quieter. Alice, a flickering hallway light, a drawer that never slid smoothly unless you tugged it twice. None of it truly mattered. But still he moved from one small task to the next with restless precision. Tightening, adjusting, sanding, replacing. Each repair was small, controlled, predictable, unlike the one thing he had never been able to repair. Emily. It had been over a year since she left. 1 year since his life had split cleanly into a before and an after. And yet the memory still felt raw, like touching skin that had never fully healed. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't accused him of anything. There had been no dramatic storm, no shattered glass, no cruel final words. She had simply said, "I need to go." No explanation, no fight, no promise to return, just gone. And sometimes Ethan thought that kind of silence hurt more than betrayal ever could. The kitchen was dim, wrapped in a soft yellow glow from the aging overhead light. The house felt smaller at night, quieter, as if it were holding its breaths. At the sink stood his mother, Linda. She washed DC slowly, not lazily, but deliberately, the kind of careful movement that belongs to someone who is tired, but refuses to admit it. Ethan watched her for a moment. Her shoulders drooped slightly, though she tried to stand straight. Her breathing was steady, but not relaxed. And whenever she glanced his way, she gave him that same gentle smile she'd perfected over the past year. The smile that said, "I'm fine." But her eyes told a different story. They carried worry. They carried grief. She never voiced. They carried the silent burden of watching her son come undone and not knowing how to stitch him back together. Ethan tightened the final screw on the cabinet hinge and stepped back. It held firm, solid, reliable. Something stayed. He wiped his hands on an old rag and leaned against the counter. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy, the kind of silence that settles into the bones of a house. And in that quiet, Ethan realized something that made his chest tighten. His mother had been carrying more than just her own exhaustion. She had been carrying him, too. His heartbreak, his distance, his slow retreat from the world. Without thinking, without planning, he stepped forward. He wrapped his arms gently around her shoulders from behind. Snorts. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't collapse. It was gratitude for the meal she still cooked. For the questions she never forced. For the way she kept this house standing while he quietly fell apart inside it. Linda stiffened at first, startled. Then slowly she leaned back into him. Her hands remained beneath the running water, and Ethel felt it the tremble, small, subtle, but there. Then she exhaled, not a sigh, not relief, something fragile, a breath that carried months of unsaid words. Ian loosened his hold just enough to see her face. And that's when he knew something was wrong. Not the everyday kind of wrong. Not the "I'm just tired" kind. This was different. Her expression wasn't sad. It was conflicted, tender, frightened, like someone standing at the edge of a truth they had postponed for too long. "Be thin," she whispered. Her voice trembled in a way he had never heard before. "There's something you need to know." The words shifted the air in the room. Ethan felt it immediately, that strange internal drop, like missing a step in the dark. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully. Linda turned off the faucet. The kitchen grew quieter. Too quiet. She dried her hands slowly, delaying the moment as if time itself could soften what she was about to say. "Not here," she said softly. "Sit with me." And somehow he understood. This wasn't a casual memory. This wasn't a small detail from the past. This was something that had weight, something connected to the ache he carried every day. They moved toward the small dining table. The air felt charged as if every silent night over the past year had been leading to this one moment. Ethan sat down, his body still, his thoughts racing. He didn't know what he was bracing for, only that whatever she was about to say would change something forever. Linda sat across from him, hands folded tightly together. The steam from the teacups between them had already begun to fade, warmth disappearing, just like explanations had. She didn't meet his eyes at first. Instead, she stared at the worn wooden surface of the table, tracing invisible lines with her gaze. Gathering courage, Ethan waited inside. Everything felt tight. His chest, his throat, the unspoken name hovering between them, Emily. Finally, Linda lifted her eyes. They were glossy, not dramatic tears, but quiet regret. "I've been watching you," she said gently. I swallowed ever since she left. There it was, the name without being spoken. Ethan opened his mouth to say he was okay to repeat the lie he had practiced so well. But she shook her head. "No," she whispered. "Not with me." The words stopped him cold. "This isn't just about heartbreak," she continued. "It's about something I did. Something I chose." Her hand moved toward the drawer beside her chair. She hesitated, then opened Italiano. The sound of wood sliding against wood echoed louder than it should have. From inside, she pulled out an envelope. Old wrinkled edges softened from being handled too many times. Ethan's heart stuttered. She placed it between them. "This came a week after Emily left," she said quietly. "It was addressed to you." Time slowed. "A letter?" he asked faintly. Linda nodded. "She came here when you weren't home." The words slammed like a blow. She was crying. "I've never seen someone that broken." She said she couldn't face you. That if she heard your voice, she wouldn't be able to leave. Ethan's hands clenched beneath the table. "Why didn't you give it to me?" he asked. Not angry, wounded. Linda's eyes filled. "She begged me not to." Silence. She said reading it too soon would only hurt you more. She believed leaving without explanation would make it easier for you to move on. "And you believed her?" he whispered. "I believed she might come back," Linda said softly. "And I thought if she did, maybe this letter would never need to exist." The confession hung heavy between them. "I thought I was protecting you," she continued. "But I may have stolen your chance to understand." Ethan reached for the envelope. It felt impossibly light, but it carried a year of unanswered questions. Sleepless nights replayed memories. He slid his finger beneath the flap. His heart pounded. This was it. The truth he had imagined 100 different ways. He unfolded the letter. His eyes hovered over the first line and then a knock. Sharp, deliberate. Both of them froze. Another knock. Knock followed and then a voice soft, uncertain, familiar. "Ethan," his breath stopped. He knew that voice. He would know it anywhere. Even after a year, even in his sleep, Emily. The world tilted. The letter trembled in his hands. Linda looked at him, fear and something else in her eyes. Hope or maybe dread. The knock came again, gentler this time, as if whoever stood on the other side wasn't sure they deserved to be let in. Ethan stood slowly. Every step toward the door felt like walking into another life. A life he thought had ended. His hand hovered over the handle. He could ignore it. He could pretend it wasn't real. He could stay safe in his anger. But he opened the door and there she was, Emily. Not the memory of her, not the version he had replayed in his mind. Her. She looked thinner, more fragile, but her eyes were the same, full of feelings she didn't know how to hide. For a moment, neither of them spoke. A year collapsed into a single breath. "I didn't know if you'd open the door," she said quietly. Ethan didn't know what to say. The letter crinkled in his grip. "You came back," he finally whispered. Emily nodded, tears brimming but not falling. "I had to." And in that suspended moment, with a letter in his hand and the author of it standing before him, Ethan understood something he hadn't before. Sometimes we think closer comes in envelopes, in explanations, in words carefully written. But sometimes closure stands on your doorstep, shaking, human, imperfect, waiting to be forgiven or not. And what happened next would not just change Ethan's understanding of Emily, it would change how he understood love itself. Because the truth, the real truth, is never as simple as we imagine when we're alone in the dark. At this time there would be no more silence.